haven't done so already, please consider giving our show a like and a subscribe. And now, enjoy the episode.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of How I Got into PT School. I'm joined today by Darby. Darby, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
I'm very excited to have you on here, Darby. Darby, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was born and raised in Alameda, Bay Area local. I attended Bishop O'Dowd High School, went to undergrad at Chico State, just graduated Samuel Merritt University, and passed my boards a couple weeks ago.
Woo! Very exciting. So it's very fortunate for you. You ended up going to a grad school that was in the same area that you're from. Did you
Yeah, it worked out really well.
did you stay at home? I actually forget. Did you live at home with your parents and then go to grad school?
I
Very,
did.
very nice. Way to save money.
Yeah, saved a lot of money.
Yeah. All right. So you kind of told us where you're from. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? You know, this is before undergrad, what your experience in high school was like, or at least introduce us to when you started thinking about physical therapy as a career.
Yeah, so I was always a very active person. I played soccer my entire life since I was really young. So sports was always a big part of my identity and who I was. And along with sports came a lot of injuries. So through my own experience, I found physical therapy to be this really cool profession, and it was definitely something that I could see myself doing. And that was kind of my entry into the profession and what really sparked my interest.
And so, speaking of interest, I find it very interesting that so many people I've interviewed so far have kind of asked this question of, did you play sports? Because typically that question leads into, yes, I did, and I got injured, and that's how I was introduced. So you're kind of like the outline of what I'd imagine being someone who ended up getting into physical therapy. So,
Right.
yeah, thanks for being cookie cutter for me.
Absolutely. Anytime.
So you played soccer. Did you play any other sports when you were in high school?
I played softball for a very long time, but stopped actually when I started high school because I wanted to just focus on soccer. And it ended up, the reason why I went to Chico State was because I got recruited there for soccer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so played there for 2 years, and then unfortunately, a couple pretty serious concussions ended my career. But it gave me time to focus on applying to PT school. So
Did your
it
coach ever
wasn't too
make you wear
bad.
those headbands? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I wore them more so actually in high school because unfortunately I've suffered from a lot of concussions throughout my life. But yes, once I got to college, I was like, no, I might want to ditch the
Yeah,
headband.
yeah. For those who don't know what that is, it's like this like padded thing that goes around your head, right? And it's to help reduce the incidence of concussion. So
Yeah,
so
the
wear
impact.
wear your cool headband. So we're kind of talking about undergrad now. So were you part of any clubs in either high school or undergrad that you think kind of helped your application when you were applying to grad school?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a pretty active member in Chico State's Pre-Physical Therapy Society, which was a club that was dedicated to helping students through the application process and getting them exposure to different physical therapy programs in the area. So I think that was really helpful because it introduced me to, the different steps and the many steps that are needed to get into a program.
Yeah, and that's really cool that your club actually took you to the school, so you got the chance. How
Yeah.
many schools did you guys visit as part of your club?
We visited Sac State, University of the Pacific, and Samuel Merritt University. And those were kind of the three big ones just because they were local
Right,
or local ish.
right. Like we wanted to stay in California. It sounds like when
Yeah,
you were looking for your schools.
absolutely.
Did you have any like a family member that was also a PT or a friend that was a PT that kind of helped guide you initially when you were looking at schools, or?
No, I actually am the first one that I really know of that chose this profession. But I did have a family member, actually, my brother suffered a pretty bad spinal cord injury my sophomore year of college. So just going through that experience of watching him rehab and making connections with some of his physical therapists, that really helped A, solidify that this was absolutely what I wanted to do, and B, make those connections. And they helped guide me through some of the application process.
Yeah, that's such a a powerful thing to have. I mean, so a family member that went through something very traumatic, and of course, finding the silver lining in the situation is that
Yeah.
you know had this opportunity to be exposed to the field in the capacity of rehabbing your brother. I didn't know that. It's very it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Um, so getting into your mindset, so now you're at Chico State. Um, you're going to school. Can you tell us a little bit about what your GPA is? So you've now going into the application season at Chico State. So talk us through what Darby's mindset is, applying to grad school.
Yeah, so thankfully I was an exercise physiology major at Chico State, and they really tailored their program and classes to kind of the prerequisites for physical therapy school. So I was really lucky with that, with just kind of like in order to get my exercise physiology major, I was meeting the requirements for PT school. So that was really fortunate. Um, I've always been a little bit of an overachiever. So my GPA was pretty high. I think I graduated from Chico State with a 3.9. And that's what I was applying with.
Wow, was that
Um,
your because there's like the core specific classes GPA, and then there's
right.
overall. So your overall was a 3.9.
Overall was a 3.9. And I think my core specific was like a 3.8, 3.85.
Very powerful
So
application.
yeah, it was always academics has kind of always been my thing. So,
Right.
and especially once I found out that I wanted to go to PT school, and I was kind of looking around at schools and what their GPA requirements were, it really kind of focused me in. And I spent, the last 2 years of undergrad really focusing on my classes and focusing on getting the grades for PT school.
So you knew going into your undergrad experience that physical therapy is what you wanted to do. It
Correct.
sounds like it was solidified in your sophomore year of college.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you knew going into it like this is definitely what I want to do. For
Yeah.
someone who's maybe on the fence about not sure, not being as sure or as solid in their choice, what would you recommend like class wise? Perhaps like how they should build their schedule. Because I know that, like you said, your program is very specific for PT.
Right.
Maybe someone who's like on the fence, like, is there certain classes they should take to kind of best prepare themselves?
Yeah, I think this is obviously like a big prerequisite, but anatomy and physiology, I think, are really important classes to take. Just take them if you need to fill like your science requirement, like pick those options because, anatomy and physiology really are the foundation of a lot of what we do with physical therapy, and having a really strong knowledge in that will get you far. So taking those classes and going, yeah, like the human body's cool and I like, the processes within it. And if that's really exciting to you, then I think maybe, that would be something that would lead you down that path. Also, maybe a biomechanics class, because I think that's super applicable to what we do as well. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's such a good point. I want to echo an idea that one of our previous interviewees, Devin, said, which is that you're going to be a lifelong learner, right? In whatever
Right.
profession you go into, and so it's very important to have a passion about what it is that you're actually learning about. So in this case, if you're taking an anatomy or a physiology course, and you're like, this is like super interesting, which I found both of them very interesting, and I'm still
Same.
to this day excited learning about uh, what's happening in the body. So if you take these courses and you're like, wow, this is amazing, maybe PT is something that you should consider. Um, so okay, so you're at Chico. You have
Hmm.
just the outstanding GPA. Um, what does your GRE look like? When did you take the GRE? What does your scores look like?
Yeah. So I took the GRE probably the summer before my senior year of college. Um, the GRE was honestly not my strong suit. I think I basically hit the like bare minimum requirements for most of the schools that I was applying to, which I think was around like a 155 for verbal, 156, 160 for quant, and then I think I got fours on the essays. Um, but I took it twice because the first time I did not do super great with it. I did end up purchasing a prep course for it, which I think helped as well. Um,
Do you recall which
but
prep course you went with?
Oh goodness, I don't. Um, if you shoot out some names, I might
You
maybe an
know,
O'Sullivan or
I vaguely recall there being, because I took it once, and I remember I did something kind of cheap because, a college student, right? You don't have a whole lot of
right.
money to spend, especially when you're shelling out all this money for the application. I think
Oh yeah.
I paid for an online prep course, but it allows you to cancel it in 30 days. And so I did it 30 days before the GRE and did 28 days of learning and then ended it right
That's
before.
awesome.
It's kind of a skeezy thing to do, but I don't know, when you're all your money is in loans, like you don't want to
Yeah.
save money, right? Where you can.
Oh, for sure.
Um, but yeah, so your first one wasn't the score that you wanted, and so in order to better yourself as an applicant, you retook the GRE. How long did you go between taking the first one and then taking the second one?
I probably gave myself 3 to 4 months to like really study and figure out what areas I needed to improve on. I'm also not the biggest fan of standardized tests,
Yeah,
so it was a little bit of also trying to figure out how to take a standardized test because I think that's half the battle with the GRE. Um, so yeah, probably about 3 or 4 months.
yeah, 3 or 4 months, and then of course this it's a good point you bring up. The standardized testing is its own experience in and of itself. So there's of course
Absolutely.
knowing the material, but then going into these prometric sites and then taking
Yeah,
these tests, having the right mindset going in there is also really important because you don't want to throw yourself. I mean, you could know the material, but then throwing yourself off in the moment might be the difference between getting in and not getting in.
absolutely.
Um, so you have taken the GRE. You have this outstanding GPA. Can you tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about your experience with shadowing? Did you find some places in Chico to get your hours to apply to PT school, or?
Yeah, so I did a lot of my hours at Butte Premier Physical Therapy, which was an outpatient ortho location. I was an aide there for about a year. Um, so I did most of my outpatient hours there. I also did some at UCSF Children's Hospital Outpatient Center for Young Athletes, which is where I did my final rotation in PT school, actually. So it was kind of
Oh,
this like full
it
circle.
must have been fun for them to see you there as shadowing and then see you
Yeah,
again as like a an extern.
absolutely. And then for my inpatient hours, I did mine at Enloe Hospital in their kind of SNF, long term acute care center.
So you have, it sounds like a collection of multiple different sites that you got your
Uh huh.
experience. Do you think that, in terms of sheer hours shadowing in your preparation versus having more of a diverse selection of experiences, which one would you say is probably weighed more in your opinion?
In my opinion, I would probably say the diversity, because I think a big, at least my understanding is a big part of having us get hours is to make sure that we really know that this is what we want to do and that we are exposed to a lot of different settings. Because PT is so diverse. It's not just outpatient ortho or
Yeah.
hospital work. And I think being able to see the different facets of it and still really enjoy it is important. And not only to get into PT school, but just for yourself, because the application process, the actual, program and the time, effort, and money that you put into it, you want to make sure that this is really what you want to do. So
Yeah.
I think the more experience you have before applying in a variety of different settings is, in my opinion, greater than just getting a bunch of hours in one.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's actually really funny. I remember when we first started PT school, where we were as a class talking about different areas of professions that you can go into with PT, and I remember hearing like inpatient neuro, outpatient neuro, and I didn't want to say anything, but I was like, I actually don't know what they're talking about. Right?
Yeah,
There's just so many different. I
absolutely.
mean, of course, now it's like, of course, but back
Right.
then it's just there's so many different areas that you can focus, so it's kind of hard to know all of them. So it's in what you're saying. I think it's a good idea to have experience in a lot of different ones on your application.
Definitely.
Um, so you kind of spoke to this a little bit, but I kind of want to dig and parse it out a little deeper. Your pre-PT program allowed you to
Mhm.
go to these schools and kind of visit the programs. Is there any other resources that you use to kind of figure out which schools you might want to go to versus another?
I did a lot of research on my own and looked up a lot of schools just online. And then schools that I didn't go to through the pre PT society, I just set up my own kind of tours of them, both formal and informal. But a big thing for me was finances as well, and just picking a school that, for me, Samuel Merritt was always my number one choice because A, it's a great program, but B, I could go live at home, and that saved me a lot of money. But I think doing your due diligence and researching schools outside of what I got at the Pre-PT Society is huge. So that's kind of what I did. A lot of just my own research.
Yeah, and another thing I want to point out about what your process was like, which I think is really good for people to hear, is to go to these programs, right?
Yeah.
You need to go visit them, and you need to get some face-to-face time because, you know, thousands, like literally thousands of applicants are coming in online, and it's hard for the professors, the people who are scoring these applications. It's hard for them to put a face to a name, of course, if you're not there. So it's
Absolutely.
good to go and talk and
Yeah.
get an
And
idea.
speaking to that as well, I think at least at Samuel Merritt, and there were a couple of other schools that I applied to had this, they had preview days where you could go, and for half a day you got tours of the schools, and you got to, talk to panels of both students and professors that were there, and like you were saying, get a little bit of face time. And I think that's really important because,
Yeah.
again, like you said, there's just thousands of people applying, so if they remember your face because you were at the preview day, that could definitely get you maybe a little bit ahead.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to echo that, it's just some schools have it as a bonus area in terms of your
Right.
points, for your application. So definitely take advantage. You're just leaving points on the table if you don't. So
Absolutely.
okay, so you're now kind of got all your ducks lined up, and you're getting ready to apply
Yes.
to the PT school. How many schools did you apply to, and how many did you get into?
I applied to, I think, 6.
6 schools. Okay.
Yeah, so it was Sac State, Samuel Merritt University, University of the Pacific, Fresno, USC, and San Diego State.
Okay.
And I got into Sac State, Samuel Merritt, UOP, Fresno. I got waitlisted at USC, and then was in the interview process at San Diego State, but ended up choosing Samuel Merritt before I got farther.
Man, that's such a the applications to the acceptance rate that's a very good.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people that are watching this right now are like, I hate you.
I know.
No, that's great though. That's so. I mean, hearing that it gives a lot of people hope too, because it's not it's not impossible to get into these programs, and of course, being waitlisted isn't a bad thing either. I was waitlisted
Right.
at Samuel Merritt, and I ended up getting in. I was actually, in fact, pretty high on the wait list at Samuel Merritt, and I still got in. So
Nice.
don't get discouraged if that's the case.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
So in hindsight, so now encapsulating your undergrad experience as well as like your high school and everything leading up to the to the application for grad school, is there anything that you would have done differently if you could have gone back and kind of changed how it went?
I think outside of applying to PT school, I think at times I wish I had had a little bit of a better PT school application life balance. I think I got really sucked into the process, which, good, bad, or indifferent. I got into the schools I wanted to get into. I ended up where I wanted to be. But I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in that process because it is extensive. But understand that it's important to enjoy life outside of it as well. And that things work out how they're supposed to. So just keep pushing through it, but also enjoy your undergrad experience or whatever else you have going on in your life alongside of that.
Yeah, that's such a good message because I think, like you said, it's easy to get sucked into the
Yes.
process, right? And of course, we all did at the time. We eat, breathe, and sleep the PT application process. You're
Right.
going online and you're just constantly sucking information, and sometimes not for the best, right? Because you're reading, I'm sure, forums about these horror stories, and
Oh, yeah.
so a thread that something or someone, I should say, watching this, that they might want to pick up on is, yeah, have a good work-life balance, right? Because once you get into PT school, it's not, you can attest to this, it's not easy.
No.
It's very not easy, and so if you have a poor work-life balance going into the program, it's going to be even harder. So go on a run,
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
do some
exactly.
yoga.
Walk outside.
All right, so Darby, you finished with the MPTE. you're done with PT
Yes.
school. Can you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about what you're doing now?
So I just got a job at near orthopedic specialists in Walnut Creek. That's where I'm currently living. And I start that on Monday. So very excited, a little nervous. But that is what I'm currently up to.
That's very exciting. And I'm sure the clinic is going to be very, very lucky to have you. And I've noticed a couple times that your hand has come up and near your face, specifically
Oh,
your left
yes.
one, and it's a very exciting thing too, right?
Yeah, so planning a wedding
Yeah,
during COVID, which has been a little crazy. This whole COVID thing has also kind of turned the job hunting process and how we all finished grad school and testing on its head. So that was definitely something that I feel like we had to adapt to a little bit.
yeah.
But um, yeah, just trying to plan a wedding and
Are you
start
guys
my
gonna do
first job.
the drive-by wedding? Standing and then everyone drives up in their car and says something and
Yeah,
then they drive away.
just wait. I don't think so.
I've heard some pretty funny because we've had a couple friends now who are planning on getting married, and of course they
Yeah,
had to postpone because it was right, I think around May or
yeah.
April when everything was really kicking off. And I think they're doing a Skype wedding, so they're just gonna have they're gonna
Wow,
do the ceremony
interesting.
now and then have everyone just tune in and watch, and then of course have
And then
the reception much later.
later,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So best of luck planning that. I know planning a wedding is not easy,
Thanks.
and then adding COVID on top of it is just I can't even imagine. So,
Right,
um, so you ended up in orthopedics. Did you
right.
always want to do ortho, or did you end up like considering other jobs?
Um, I think going into PCT school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was open to a lot of things. I had experience in ortho, I had experience in neuro and inpatient and acute rehab through my volunteer hours. Coming out of it now, I think I'm really interested in ortho and sports med too, because that's where my last rotation was, and I just had an absolute blast doing that. Um, so I think what changed between going into PT school and now is that I feel a little bit more focused and I feel like I know where I want to start my career. But I also think that's the beauty of PT and the beauty of PT school is we come out kind of as these great generalists and we can, focus on an area for a little bit and get good in that. But then if you get bored or want to do something else, you can easily switch over to a different specialty. So right now it's outpatient ortho and sports med, but who knows? In
Yeah,
4 or 5 years, it might be something else.
yeah, totally. I have a friend who, when I was starting the PT application process, he had already been working in the field for 10 years, and I remember he said to me, um, right around the time I got into PT school, he said, you know, PT school teaches you how to not kill someone, right? Like
Yeah,
it's like the bare minimum. Like you don't learn
right.
very much in PT school. It's just like enough to make you like acceptable as a PT.
Yeah.
It's afterwards that you learn everything. And so at the time, I remember thinking like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna learn all kinds of stuff. But no, it's totally we're super generalists right now, and
Yeah,
it's gonna be exciting these next 5 years, kind of figuring out who and what we want to be as a PT. Um,
definitely.
you kind of spoke to the whole COVID situation, um,
Hmm.
flipping over like the whole career, physical therapy in general, and the medical field in general too. How do you think the next 10 years of PT is going to shape up, uh, you know, with the consideration of COVID, but even outside of COVID? Like, what
Yeah,
direction do you think we're going?
I think COVID has really opened the door to telehealth in physical therapy. And I think, before this, it was definitely a part of our practice, but now so many clinics have had to switch over to that. And I think a lot of clinics and practitioners might stay with that model. And I think as we go forward past the pandemic and, in the next 10 to 15 years, telehealth is going to really grow in our profession. And I think it's going to be really important as both new grads and anyone getting into the field, the medical field in general, really understanding how to use technology and use, Zoom platforms and video chatting platforms to provide service. Because I think it can be personally a great way to deliver PT, but just with the climate of the world right now, it's kind of what we're using. But I think it's going to stick. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. I referred that research group to you, right, with the VR?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Darby and I were both interviewed by a research and development group on how to implement virtual reality in physical therapy
Right.
for moments like this, right? So I'm really excited to see where the world of physical therapy is going to go in light of what's happening right now. Because
Agreed.
when you face adversity, you get a lot of innovation that comes out of it.
Hmm.
So personally, I agree. I think it's going to be a very interesting 10 years.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now let's whole broad scheme of things. So, if you were to give anyone advice on their journey into physical therapy, whether it be someone who's just considering it right now as a profession, or someone who's like actively in the process of applying, what kind of advice would you want to have in their shoes?
I think I would have wanted someone to tell me to just trust the process, that it is a very rigorous, time consuming, at times difficult. You feel like you want to give up, but things really do work out the way that they should. Um, and surround yourself by people that you love and that support you, and find that group that can lift you up in the challenging times, both applying and getting in and going through the process, and just try and enjoy it. I think we all get wrapped up so much in the destination and the end goal and where we want to be in 3 years and getting that degree. And it's a lot of fun along the way if you really let yourself enjoy it. So take in the small moments, celebrate the small victories, work hard, and I think it'll all work out.
Yeah, man, that is such a good piece of advice for anyone. Really, not even in just specific to physical therapy, but just in life, is to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
I kind of resonates with me a little bit because I wanted to be finished so badly in PT school,
Yeah.
and now that you say that, I'm looking back. I'm like, man, there's so many times we were playing volleyball that it was just like that
I
was so fun,
know.
and
And just how enjoyable it is. Like, it doesn't have to always be this super difficult, stressful thing. Like, you
yeah,
can really, really make it a lot of fun.
yeah. And I will say that when you guys do get into your PT programs, because you will, when you do get into your PT programs, you're never going to be surrounded with more quality people than your cohort, because these are all like-minded individuals who are just absolutely fantastic. So really just enjoy the presence, because it's going to be a really uplifting community that you're going to be a part of. So
Absolutely. That was the best part about PT school for me. Obviously, becoming a PT, but I've made a lot of really awesome friends that I think I'm going to have for the rest of my life. So,
yeah. All right, Darby. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know getting ready for a job might be kind of stressful, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your morning to do this interview, and I'm sure everyone else thanks you as well.
definitely, Jeremy, this was awesome.
All right. Hey, Darby, you take care now, okay?
All right. Bye, Jer.